sorting out your handphones, I got a few questions to the panelists. Perhaps my first question is to Mr. Abbas Jah. I mean, your team is about, you know, the issue is global and people keep on making mistakes, repeating mistakes. So what are your advice to us, having heard about, the local situation? Perhaps I think Dato' Sharon, I think, came up with quite an interesting point about, how do you maximize the value of funds that are being allocated to this area and understanding the need of our house buyers. So what are the two, three things that we need to be aware of in handling this issue?
Well, but thank you very much for that question. I would begin by saying that these are not easy issues. So each country struggles with them, and the reason why we have a problem is because they're difficult, both from a political standpoint, but also from a technical standpoint. But that said, I think there are 2 or 3 things that I would emphasize. So one is land is critical, and very few countries have got the land part of housing right. And by that I mean the effective provision of adequate land for affordable housing. And as I mentioned in my presentation, there are interesting models now where there are public-private partnerships which assemble land, get all the permits, and then give them back to developers. But that said, it's also a very risky venture. A lot of these land banks have got embroiled in corruption in many countries. So transparency is key when you design these kind of schemes. So that's point number one. And the second point I would make is, again, that I don't think, and this may be slightly controversial, so forgive me for saying this, but I don't think that home ownership per se is a necessary public goal. There's a lot of research, and people sort of make the case for home ownership by saying that it makes societies more stable and so on. There's no empirical evidence for that. As I said, there are many countries in Europe which have very low rates of ownership, but high rates of rental, which are quite stable. I mean, Germany is quite. So that is again something that has to be decided politically as a question. As a country, do you want to promote home ownership or not? I'm not making a value judgment either way, but I would say that we do need, as public policy professionals, we do need to look at the rental markets, and especially at the lower end, how to make them more efficient.
Okay, perhaps maybe I will get Dato' Sharon to elaborate a bit more about your point, because I thought you raised the same point about we have any country in the world will have a limited fund in terms of how to deal with this issue, and you based on the statistic that you have discovered from your research, I think there was a point about what do we do with this money? Do we put everything into housing, or is there a better usage of that? Any more further elaboration on that?
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, I tend to favor a market-based solution if it's possible, and 8990 in the Philippines shows that a market-based solution is possible. A profit-maximizing developer can make good returns by making houses which most people can afford. And one of the problems we have in Malaysia is that technology hasn't improved. If you go down to Forest City in Johor, where the country garden is building that gigantic development, which is reclaimed land, they're building houses in like weeks, in months. I mean, within 9 months there was water, and within 9 months there's a 5-star hotel. They built the hotel, they reclaimed the land, they did everything within 9 months. So that's what technology can do. Now, if we were able to produce houses like the Chinese are able to, and have it done in a technological way, then people could produce houses very quickly and very cheaply. And I think market forces by themselves will bring it down. I think it's really good that the government has decided, if I'm not mistaken, that from now on, when JKR gives out tenders, it will favor those who use industrial built systems. And that kind of thing is going to make things better. So there is a market-based solution. But when it comes to using money, I mean, as a society, we've decided that government money, it is right for government to allocate money to people with less income. And some countries may decide that you shouldn't give money to people. But in our country, we decided we should help people. So if you want to help people, is the best way of helping people with the limited funds available, giving rich people money so they can buy a house? or is it better spent in other ways? And if you ask me, I think people should make their own choices. You should just give people money, and they decide. They decide whether they want to rent a house, they want to buy a house, they want to live somewhere far away and save the money for the kids' education, they want to, I don't know, whatever. To me, just let people spend the money how they want, and don't tell them that I'm giving you 30,000, but you can only use it to buy a house. You can't use it for children's education, you can't use it if you get sick, you can only use it to buy a house. Okay.
Mr. Chang, you want to respond to that?
Those who cannot afford to buy a house, don't buy. It's very obvious. Like what Dr. Sharam said earlier. Now, owning a house is a riskier proposition. You got to balance between buying and renting. That's a basic thing, okay? When you buy a house, you're lumbered with 20, 30-year loan. You got to diligently pay installment, otherwise you'll suffer the fate of foreclosure. And have you all made a study as to what would happen to a financial state of a family if they suffer the fate of a foreclosure? That's very important. Not only does the wife get angry with you, you got no money for the children. There's no life there. So why are we such in a hurry to want to buy and encourage our rakyat to buy a house? The government should not be the biggest developers marketer. It looks like as though the government is encouraging it, as if they are the marketing agent of developers, which should not be so. Now, renting is a much easier thing. I'll rent a house at a lower rate. I don't like the vicinity. I have got the choice of the facilities being available. If I'm not happy and I got uprooted to transfer to Penang to do work, I just pack my bag and move off. That's all. That's much easier. So do not force upon our rakyat with carrot, 20,000 upfront government will bear. If they are not disciplined to even come up with a basic 10% deposit, don't buy. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps before I go to the questions that you have asked, maybe Dato', you listed down a lot of initiative and effort by the government in terms of addressing this issue. I think the challenge in Malaysia is always implementation, execution. So how are you going to make sure that all the policy and effort by the government is going to be implemented as planned? I think you mentioned about wanting to build more than 1 million houses. That's quite a lot. So how are you going to make sure that it's being followed through and it's effectively delivered?
Thank you, Chairman. Before that, I would say I agree with Dato' Chan and Mr. Chang about what they are saying. But I do agree, as I agree that the technology is important to expedite process. There is also a process prior to the physical development that need to be catered to. This is about the root system. If I may give some example, last year alone, we could not take off about 15 housing projects due to the delivery system which involve PBT. PBT meaning that some states takes about more than 1 year to approve kebenaran merancang, which is KM. Some states even 2 years to settle the KM before the physical construction starts. So what I'm saying is, if we were able to expedite the process, besides using some kind of technology or by Dato', so that we managed to kick off on the same year the project approved. Meaning that if we were to wait until next year we start the project, then the price of material, as I mentioned, which is directly contribute to the house prices. This year, the material prices, and the next year is very much different. Of course, the price will go up. So, if in that sense, if we were able to expedite the process, at least we were able to achieve. So, if we are talking about the 1 million project, I'm looking at the more beyond the numbers only. The government said 1 million project affordable houses to be built, but we are looking at the numbers involved. If we calculate or multiply it by 3 or by 4, we're talking about housing project. So it's almost about 500,000 of people which is going to be enjoy from the government policy of providing 1 million affordable houses. So I'm looking at from that perspective.
Okay.
Now I would like to respond to that. Now, for the benefit of Encik Abbas, for our representative of World Bank, PBT means Pihak Berkuasa Tempatan. That's local council.
Yeah.
Local council is the stumbling block for approval of plans on land. Sometimes it takes about 1-2 years. That's what Dato' Dr. Rahim said lah. Now, but then it's the federal government, KPKT, they comes up with Jabatan One-Stop Center, OSC. OSC have always been adopted by all the PBT. Therefore, we must now start punishing those delinquent operators of our OSC. Mana PBT lah tu. Pull them by the ears and drag them up and see what we can do about it. No, because the policy came from federal, OSC. Therefore, they must implement and not just stop there. One-stop center doesn't mean it's just stop there. It's supposed to be one fast-track approval of all the plans. That should be the way.
Okay, then why don't we go to the first question that we have.
Mr. Moderator,
Yeah.
if I,
No,
actually,
but I think this is quite relevant to the issue. I think the question that we have is, do we need an affordable home authority that basically coordinates all these efforts? So to a certain extent, it deals with this one-stop center and any other. Because I think one of the issues in Malaysia is, land matters are basically vested with states. And I think, so you have this federal state issue and so whether...
Not only that, Mr. Moderator, we now got friendly state and unfriendly state.
No. So whether this affordable home authority can resolve some of this problem. Dato', perhaps from your perspective.
Okay. The OAC, as mentioned by Mr. Chang, actually OAC is to expedite the process. And it is in all PBT or local authority, there is an OAC. Okay, according to the norm, if I'm not mistaken, it should take about 57 or 59 days for the OAC to approve the KM, provided the application is completed. Now, when I mentioned about the PBT, actually I'm not blaming the PBT for delaying the process. Part of the biggest problem comes from the developers. The architect, the consultant, which when they submit the application, it is not complete. So that's where the delay is. So I'm not blaming PBT. Sorry, some state I did mention, even though, but generally I'm not blaming them. But to have an OAC, central OAC at KPKT, I don't think it's practicable. Because it's dealing with the land matters. We will talk about housing project, for example. It involves many agencies. It involves many utilities companies. So PBT or local authority, they know best how to solve this problem. That's why we have the OAC at the PBT, so that they can expedite matters.
So the question about a new authority dealing with
I
the
don't
old
think we need
problem.
that. Now, at the moment, JKT, Jabatan Kerajaan Tempatan under the Ministry of KPKT, is the agency, and they are not controlling the OACC, but actually they have some say in the PBT. So they are the one who providing a grant to the PBT, so they can say something to the PBT. If we have a problem with PBT, contoh Sepang ke, I'm not saying because they Selangor, or in Putrajaya, for example, the JKT can always help us out this thing.
So, from your experience, is there any a good story about having a central authority looking at these affordable housing issues? Is there a model that we can learn from anywhere in the world?
I mean, like if you look at the US, for example, one of the reasons why they had the subprime mortgage crisis is that the regulation of the housing sector is fragmented across many bodies. So that, and frankly, that's not a problem that they've solved yet. So, I mean, I don't know Malaysia enough to say whether it makes sense institutionally, but what I would say is that it does make sense to look at the finance, the land, the approvals at the local government level, to have some kind of body that looks at these and is able to solve problems in a holistic way.
The next question that we have is about database, about whether there can be a single database where buyers can go in and choose houses where which meets their affordability and expectation. Why is that no such a system now? Anybody?
If you buy stocks and shares, Securities Commission makes sure there's about disclosure, there's prospectus, everything's got to be disclosed. You buy a house, you don't know anything. You don't know.
But in fact, KPKT has already started one,
Yeah.
They are now collating a single umbrella with all the data, those under construction, those in the planning stage, dalam process, and those have been completed. So that's where all information must be submitted by all the respective states, authority or agencies for them to continue. So that if I were to be relocated, for instance, my job allows me, I get transferred to Kota Baru to do work, and I want to stay there for a few years. I'll just have to key in Kota Baru, double-story terrace house, then it must just pop out like that. Then I'll be able to then plan my time, you know. That is a good policy.
So what stops that from happening?
It's,
Enforcement.
it's not stopping. Actually, we are in the process of developing that system. We
Okay.
call the system called TEDO.
Yeah.
It's supposed to serve to the buyers, the potential home buyers, and the developers. For developers, probably if they go to the system, they can get information on which area they should build a house and what type of house they should build based on their demand. And for the house buyer, if I want to buy a house, say in Semenyih, so I will go into the system and see if there is any developer, if there is any credible developer in Semenyih, what is the price offered in Semenyih area. So that the system all about. If I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be launched in September this year, inshallah.
Could I add one thing on this? I think what we're seeing in many countries now is this, and it goes a little further than this. So not just about properties, but cities should have public asset registers, which identifies every parcel of land and how it's being used. So if you want, for example, a good property tax system, you should actually tax properties that are vacant or not used at a higher rate so that they don't lie vacant. And so, like, for example, Philadelphia in the US has a very good public asset registry, and that's something that, frankly, all cities should be doing.
Okay. Next, I think it's about industry building system. I've heard about this for many, many years, when I was involved in trying to make our construction sector more effective. I mean, and it has been on the table, but why it is not being taken up? Is there any thing that drags that from being implemented?
Okay, IBS is under CIDP. CIDP is under Kementerian Kerja Raya.
Okay.
But we in Ministry of Land, Ministry of Housing, KPKT, we do promote this IBS system. For your information, at the moment, any PPR project that will be built must be at least 70% IBS compliance. But how far CIDP push the industry to really promote the IBS, I'm not quite sure. Because it is supposed to be taken by KKR, lah, Kementerian Kerja Raya, which is CIDP and so we have played our part. But the general, whether the developers really now comply or how many percent they have set up for any of the construction building, I'm not sure about that. But for the PPR, we have set at least 70% compliant, IBS compliant.
Is there any enough pressure for our developers to be efficient? Because if, for example, there's huge demand for certain kind of houses, it's just a matter of passing all the inefficiency to the buyers. Any view on that? Datuk Sharon, maybe you have seen the data? Or
As I said earlier, the way we build houses hasn't changed much since the 1960s. So, whereas many other parts of the world, they've changed a lot. So I think, what should make us all think hard is what happened in the Philippines. So this is homegrown technology. We don't have to go to Japan or Germany to buy the technology. You can develop it locally to suit local conditions, and then you can build houses faster and cheaper. And basic economics, if you increase the supply of houses, then prices will come down. Right? At the moment, we try and subsidize demand, increase supply, and the way to increase supply is to just build more, cheaper and faster.
yes.
Now, the last 3 years, the government has actually offered a lot of incentive to encourage the developers to participate in IBS. In fact, it has been done every year, this last 3 years. This has been done by the government. I mean, it's a good thing, except that developers are not obedient. What the government need to do is pull them by their horns and say that any private development, X percentage must. You got to start somewhere, you see. If you do not start somewhere, you can say whatever you want. They're going to use the old-fashioned, traditional way to build, and you will not have enough houses. So it's all the political will. It's up to the government. Yes, I demand for it. Similarly, like we always been fighting for build and sell, 1019. We have got sell and build current system, then we have got the total build and sell. But we have come up with a hybrid called build and sell 1090, where you pay 10% down, no more payment until rumah dah siap, dengan electricity, water, strata, title, all that. But somehow, the government made a U-turn. So, but then, again, these are political will of the government. So if we are serious about having this IBS, compulsory X percentage, the government must do that and pull that by their horns. Thank you.
Until now, if I'm not mistaken, there is no policy or decision by CIDB or Kementerian Kerja Raya to issue a standard for the IBS compliance. That, if I'm not mistaken, there is none of it.
None.
So it's up to the developer to how many percent will be IBS compliant or that. So I do agree with Mr. Chang that a standard need to be issued and must be by all developers lah. If we want to promote this technology.
Okay, let's go to another issue that was raised just now about developing the rental market. There's one suggestion here is for a REIT to be set up to acquire all the unsold houses and to onwards rent that to people. Would that be a viable idea? Have you seen this kind of effort anywhere?
I think the problem with, I haven't seen that model anywhere, but I think the problem with that would be how do you manage it? Like you need a professional class of property managers who are, and especially when you're talking about the lower end of the market, that needs to be developed. And again, there are good models of that, of managing social housing from Europe that you could adopt. But I haven't seen this REITs sort of buying up and renting.
And I think a follow-up question on that is whether our legal system is adequately balanced in terms of protecting both the interests of the owner and the interests of the interests of the renter. So is that a problem in Malaysia?
Do you have rent control here?
We do have rent control. I mean, I think it was abolished. Right?
I mean, rent control, it does not work. I mean, in the end, in the long term, it harms the housing market. So rent control is a bad idea. That much we do know.
So how do we spur the rental market? Any
governed by the contract laws, isn't it? Because this is a rental, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It involves agreement. So when there is an agreement, actually, it's fall under contract laws. So any contract laws have to be followed accordingly. I don't think the rent control actually is to control the price of rental especially for a building built before the World War, if I'm not mistaken. But I think the act's already abolished.
But I suppose if, for example, one of the measures to address this issue of providing homes to people is through renting. Perhaps one of the thinking is to look into how this market can be further developed and to make sure, because for example, if you are a tenant, I think one of the thing that you fear most is your landlord telling you, okay, you have to move out next week. So I think if there is some protection in terms of an orderly process where you have enough time to relocate, to find suitable home for your family, then perhaps it can be something that that's worth considering. Any thoughts on that?
So on the rental market, I would say two things. One is I think you need to look at the financing also. Again, looking at, say, the bottom 40, you need to incentivize. Let's say I own a home with a single story. I could get easy finance so that I put in a second story and rent that out. I think the finance and also some kind of technical assistance to help people build in the bottom part of the market. I think that's important. On this, I agree with you that you need to give protections to tenants, so there's an orderly process. I mean, the US is a good example where you sign a lease and there's a process by which you terminate the lease. So that gives protection to the tenants.
Okay. There are two types of rental markets. There's a private rental market, which even in Malaysia we have. I mean, people who speculate and buy expensive condos and rent it out to expatriates. That's one kind of private rental market. Then you have the kind of more government social rental market, like PPR, which is one example where the government builds the houses and rents it out at rates which are below market. Now, whether we should continue doing this and have the government build more more affordable apartments so that people who can afford to rent it. Or maybe we should give people subsidies, give cash to people so that they decide where they want to use their cash. So why should the government build a PPR? Maybe private sector builds a PPR and then you give people money and people use that money to subsidize the rental. There are many ways of looking at it, but yeah, rental market. But we don't like rental. Malaysians as a whole don't like rental. We see it as a waste of money, right?
Okay, there's one question here about access to financing for non-salaried workers. I think because now, especially now, I think there's a lot of people, even those who just completed their studies. I think they go directly to business, especially with all this facilitation through social media. So how can these people have better access to financing? Because certainly they don't have that certainty of income. And some of them, sometimes they don't even bother to manage their accounts properly. But this could be the category where, when they go and look for financing because of the way they manage their own finances, then they may not be, assessed as eligible. Is there any thoughts on this?
This is actually an area where there's a lot of interesting work going on. So Mexico is a good example, and India is another one. Actually, Indonesia is also doing some interesting work there, which is to use big data to estimate the credit risk of somebody who doesn't have a regular salary. So there are other predictors of whether you'll repay a loan or not, which are not linked necessarily to having a steady salary. And I can give details if you're interested offline, but this is an area where big data is going to make a lot of difference in the credit scoring and the risk.
Yes, you want to say something?
You must realize the banks are in the business of lending money. There's no reason why banks don't want to lend money. That's a bottom line. That's all. There are good reasons why banks don't lend out money, because he's not eligible for the margin that he applied for. Thus, I see bank as a filtering system, a system whereby he look upon your capability to repay back. If you're asking for such a hefty loan sum where you can't even afford to service, he will surely not lend. That's the purpose of a bank. Now documentation is very important. Bank are always gives out loan based on legal documentation, salary slips, bank statements, as well as EA forms, bank EA forms, all that. Without those, it's not that the bank do not lend. They still lend, but based on some other document proof that you have got. Like for instance, a Pasar Malam owner. This poor fella has got loads of money. This Pasar Malam fella, he got fixed deposit in the millions. But he doesn't have EA form because he doesn't declare. Okay? So all he has to do is to
get a bank loan.
So what he has got to do is to convince the bank that, hey, I've got FD here. Why don't you lend me pledge against FD? That also boleh pakai. That's all. So the banks actually can think out of box to lend loans over to those fishmonger too. Same thing. It's just a matter of either documentary or some proof to that extent that you have got money available and that you are able to service. Not because you're a VIP fella, not because you're a Dato or Tan Sri. It's because whether you're able to service or not. Period. Okay.
So based on your experience, you're dealing with house buyers. Are they well educated in terms of this sort of issues? Because it could be that they can be a successful entrepreneur, but they just don't care about building their credit rating so that they can be rated appropriately. So is there a case where a certain segment of our people are not aware about the importance of building up their credit?
There are people who are ignorant about this area. They're there just to have a business, make money, enough to fend for their families and a roof over their head. But to be more educated, again, depends on level of understanding sometimes. Level of understanding. Some of them are illiterate, but they got money. We have got columns, we have to write articles, publish in the newspapers, all that. That's the best the HBA could do, that's all. But then when people come over to HBA during our meet a public session on Saturdays, we got loads of people. But those are problematic cases. Mangsa project terbengkalai. Victims of abandoned project. Victims of strata management issues, Camp A, Camp B fighting for power. Those. But we hardly see anybody who comes in and say that, I got loan problem lah. Can you lend me? Doesn't make sense because we are not in the business of lending. But what we can do is we tell them, go over and if you're a victim of abandoned project, Ministry of Housing has got a special mechanism. They issue a certificate to say that you're a victim, and accordingly you're eligible to take out EPF for the second time and take a second loan. You are not blacklisted with the certification from KPKT. So it's not end of the whole world.
So, I think we can go on and on talking about this issue. But I think we have to land somewhere. Because, even looking at the questions that I have here, I think it goes back to the same issue about data, going back to the issue about financing, going back to the issue about, can we have more efficient system to bring the cost down? Land is finite, it's not going to grow. So, perhaps in closing, maybe I can give you 3 minutes each. How do we really, what will be the priority in terms of, to tackle this issue? What should be the first 2 things that you'll do so that, we can move this agenda forward in terms of affordable housing? Perhaps you want to start.
I would repeat the same things that I would say. The land is really critical, and basically cities knowing how much land they own and what is being done in each parcel. That kind of granular information is very, very important. And using that land strategically, that would be my first. I would re-emphasize rental housing for the bottom 40. I very much liked the point made by the MD from Khazana that government shouldn't really care whether you own or rent. And for that, I think rental often makes a lot of sense for poorer segments of society. I think those are the 2 big points from my end.
Dr. Duran, your conclusion?
Building an affordable house actually is a national agenda. Our ministry and our minister actually is championing, really championing. So the 1 million policy set by the government, this is one of the proof that we are really serious about it. We do have a forum, so-called Majlis Perumahan Negara, ataupun National Housing Policy. Just that the National Housing Policy, the membership does not include all the Menteri Besar or Ketua Menteri. So therefore, in that sense, it's not really binding. Decision made by MPN is not really binding. But we persuade from time to time for the state particularly, because we can't do this alone. When we talk about the house, it's related to land. Land is the state matters. So, like it or not, states need to really come forward and give some leniency in here and over there, particularly in approving or expediting the KM or providing state land for the, kalau we will talk about the government federal project, providing a suitable state land for that, so that government can reduce the cost and provide the house for the affordable people. It is all about, it is not only KPKTs alone. We can't do it alone. So we need help from states, from the developers, from the regulators, HBA, REHDA particularly, to make this policy or target set by the government materialize. So we do hope that we have a strong support from all walk of life. So thank you.
Dr. Shara?
2 points. I guess the first one is on industrial built systems and using a market-based solution. So, if we have industrial built systems, we'll have less reliance on foreign labor, more reliance on skilled Malaysian labor. We'll develop a whole new industry in Malaysia which can provide good quality jobs to people. So it won't be a job as a laborer, mixing cement, but working in a factory and designing and building high-quality homes, and that market solution. The second one is this idea that the solution to high house prices is lending people more money. That is not a solution. So we mustn't listen to people who say, oh, there's a problem, lend them more. No. The fundamental problem is that prices are too high in the first place, not that they can't borrow the money. And so we have to find marketplaces to that. The third thing is to decide who do we want to help. And who really do we want to help as a society? Do we want to help people who earn less than 2,000 ringgit, less than 3,000 ringgit, people, whatever it is, decide who we want to help. And then decide how much we want to give them, and find out really is, what kind of help do they really need. I do think that people know the best about what's best for their family. So, whether it's they want to spend it on the children's education, buying a house, whatever, it's best to give it to them, rather than to put it in subsidies and everything else.
Mr. Chang?
In my parting speech, I've got 2 issues. First issue is basically Now, how to regulate developer, how to regulate house prices, control house prices. Now, during the festive season, Hari Raya, Deepavali, all that, and as well as Chinese New Year, we control chicken price. We control egg prices, all that. Why can't we control house prices in the affordable category? Now, the rest of it, bebas lah. Maknanya tu, developer can make money from those not under control one. Now, we look at, the formula is very simple. The building components of a house like cement, steel, per square foot sand are all regulated already by the government. In additional professional fees, lawyers' fee, architects' fees, planners' fees, and pre-compliance fees to the PPT are all standardized. The land cost is also standardized. With a click of a button, JPPH will tell us how much is it per square foot. Why can't we now control house prices for affordable category? Developer says, I only make 20% of profit only. Bagi dia 25%. Give them 25% also, it's okay. Now let's look at the other costs. This will eradicate hidden costs, all rasuah money or expediting fee, all that. If these are regulated, no more such thing as a hidden cost, and there is a time frame to complete. That's where the OSC comes, time frame to complete. Okay? Second issue, this is where I need your financial brains. Most of you all here would know better how to allow me to put all the jigsaw puzzle together. I've got this idea I've been pondering for the last 2 years. I don't know how to put it together. It's basically making EPF as the financier for EPF contributor in affordable category. Most of us, we pay EPF, most of us lah. Okay? EPF, our money is there, tapi tak boleh pakai dulu. Okay? EPF will buy insurance coverage, endowment plan, whereby they multiply. Money is multiplied there, Overriding premium through EPF contribution, then the EPF money will swell up. Think of a mechanism whereby EPF can lend money to the contributor. Lend money to the contributor, and whatever contribution is there for my old age, So I'm looking into that area whereby EPF can play a role here. Some banks have difficulties giving out loans, okay? But EPF should not be a problem. But please help me out, dear audience, to put the pieces together. For 2 years, I've been bogging my mind. I don't know how to put it together. Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we started the day by having DG Rashid outlining the issue, and I think he put it in a very nice way that it is a complex thing. Moving forward, we have to develop the ecosystem. And then we have this esteemed panelists basically reinforcing the point. I think we talked about experiences in other market. Dato was talking about the effort by the government. Sharon coming up with data about, how to define the problem. Is it just, is it applicable to the whole country, or it is only limited to certain markets? And Mr. Chang, articulately arguing, as if he was arguing before the federal court about the needs and right of house buyers. So I think, and I think there were certain issues that we talk about, the building system. We got examples where certain building can be done in a very fast way. The question is why we don't adopt that in Malaysia. We know the issue of one-stop centers, although, and I think Datuk clarified that it is not meant for process to stop there, Mr. Chang. I think it's supposed to facilitate the process. But it is quite complex, and as usual, for in forum like this, we can always surface all the problems and possible solution, but the most important part is who is going to bring all these things to make sure that there could be more positive outcomes. And I hope the panelists and people who are attending, wherever you can influence this process, I think we have to work together because this is a national problem and it solves a lot of problem of many Malaysians. So I think it's something that we have to shoulder on as Malaysians. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should thank our panelists in the normal way.